Yo, what's good YouTube? It's boardzy and it's time for everybody's favorite type of videos, a mousepad roundup, where I take a stack of mousepads that I have been neglecting to make reviews of, and I talk about them briefly. So yeah, that's all this is going to be. If you enjoy mousepad content, let me know, because I do have at least like 15 other pads that I could talk about. Yeah, first off, I'm going to start with the new ZOWIE pads. They have the GSRSE Gray, which is a gray GSRSE, and the GSR2, which is a bit more interesting. I honestly don't know what to say about this. Everybody and their widow knows about the GSRSE. I don't know what they expect me to say about it, aside from the fact that it's gray, but I can also use it as a comparison for the GSR2, which is the more innovative of the bunch. Yeah, this is kind of a revamp of the GSR. It has been the same forever. It's been heavily criticized for the lack of durability, poor resistance to humidity, and just overall not being a consistent pad and being super muddy. The GSR was one of my first pads, and I just remembered it was like QCK level of bad, where I just didn't even want to get another one. It was just one of the cloth pads that I ruled out, but I've really come to appreciate it, especially with lighter mice. You can see like just how little glide it has, like how abruptly the mouse comes to a stop. So the friction is just going to be like a gear higher than on something like even the GSRSE or the Saturn Pro and Artisan Zero. Any of the pads that are like smooth cloth pads with a pour-on base, the GSR is going to feel significantly more controlled, which is not news to anybody, but even with the updates, they still captured the muddiness of the pad. I have put a few weeks of time on it now, and I have not seen like a sharp decline in glide. It definitely still is affected by humidity, though. I don't think the pad gets to the point where the mouse is going to feel stuck in the surface. The initial friction won't be that high, but there are definitely times where the pad has a much less slick feeling than it does at other times. Those were the worst air quotes ever. I don't know what the fuck I was just doing. But yeah, I don't know if they've made any adjustments to the foam on the pad. A lighter test would be bad because I have it stacked on a mouse pad, so I gotta do the classic mouse pressing into the pad test, and you can see there is a bit of plushiness. So if you do want to get a bit more control, you can also just put more pressure into the pad. But I don't really know if you need to do that. That just varies based on your grip style. The quality of this is actually exceptional. I don't remember if the stitching was always this good and almost flush with the pad, but it's really soft, not raised whatsoever. Nobody's really going to have a problem with the stitching, and they have the same SR foam base as they have on the GSRSE. I obviously have it stacked on a pad, but it's not going to be a poor performing base. Out of the box, it isn't 1000% flat, but it's still like, I don't have an issue with it lying flat. But yeah, these ZOWIE pads could ultimately be an iota more premium, but really you're paying for the surface with the GSR, and I feel like if you like the old surface, you're probably going to be a fan of this, unless you literally enjoy the worn down extreme friction, because this is going to be a bit faster than that. But I don't know, maybe after a few months of use this could wear down even more. So yeah, in conclusion on the ZOWIE pads, I have come around. I do think the GSR is based, even on tracking and target switching scenarios. I just noticed myself like being faster and smoother and more accurate in some cases with smaller mice. And the GSRSE, the gray version is great. I don't know what more I can really say about it. Performs the exact same. I mean, all of these pros use it in like every fucking game. It's a solid, smooth, controlled pad. But it's just really not innovative to a point I can give you a spiel on it. But yeah, if you're interested in extreme control pad, I would check out the new GSR potentially. But yeah, now moving on to the next pad. Next up is going to be the Kuroson Ninja, which is a bit more interesting, weird of a mouse pad. I don't really know how to describe it. When I first started using it, which was a while ago now, it felt like a very unique, smooth, speedy, almost Raiden clone pad. But since I started using it, it broke in and it became a lot more sticky, like on your arm and just in general as a surface. And now it feels like almost a plastic pad. Like it just has a very unique, weird texture to it. I don't find it as comfortable as I did out of the box. It still does have a bit of slickness to the glide, but I would say it is higher static friction and more medium dynamic friction. What's interesting about it is the base. It's not, this might look like an alpha cell base. It's clearly not pour-on, but it's a lot more like textured and aggressive and sticky to the actual touch, which in turn makes it perform pretty well. So the quality of the pad is not an issue really, but yeah, the surface just broke in, and I feel like it broke down more than it broke in. It just feels like a much less interesting pad than it did out of the box. It's not something that I would really gravitate towards. The design is cool, and I would say it's probably, if you're buying it, it should be because you want a design on a pad like this more than the qualities of the mouse pad itself. I know it is out of stock at the moment though, and it is gonna like restock in October. So yeah, kind of that's just gonna be all for the Kuroson Ninja. So yeah, next up is going to be the Gamesense Lidar, which I feel like really went under the radar. It's just not a pad I've heard people talk about or review very much. It is basically Gamesense's Raiden clone. I pulled out the Artisan Raiden, and I'll show the surfaces up close. It does feel very similar, and it does have a similar style of performance. It is not a direct one-to-one clone of the Weave, but definitely far and away the closest pad on the market to the Raiden. But of course, there is going to be a catch. It does have a natural rubber base, which just makes the glide and overall speed of the pad feel much different. So in terms of like the surface and when you're like actually just spinning the mouse around, it does feel similar, but in game there is a gear more of control on the Lidar. So if you do want something that feels more like a worn-in Raiden, that is probably your option, but I would really like to see Gamesense put this on a pad with a Poron base, because we are in a world where there are just so many Hien clones, Zero clones, but nobody has really gotten close to cloning the Raidens, and now they have a surface that pretty much gets you there. So I would like to see where they go from here, but it's obviously not a bad pad, it's just not directly a Raiden, which is what I feel like this pad is trying to be. The stitching is fucking ridiculous. This is really almost as good as Artisan stitching, which is just pretty wild for what is a $30 500 by 500 pad. So if you guys do want something that is smoother to the touch and definitely still speedy, I would say that this is one of the better pads on the market. I honestly don't know how the long-term durability would be. I know on the Raiden itself it's not too good, so I just don't know if this style of weave is something that doesn't hold up to long-term use. But yeah, on a variety of pads, this pad honestly felt pretty good. Not going to be like my #1 option once again, but for the price, I don't feel like you can really complain about it. Next up is going to be the Fnatic Jet, which has been a highly requested review. It is a speed pad. It is very similar to pads like the Vancer Ice, the Glorious Ice, any of these just smooth plasticky surfaces that have very low dynamic friction and low, but not like Shiddinkai level low initial friction. So these are all just kind of like poor Shiddinkai clones in essence. I actually did have a review copy of this from Fnatic, or not a review copy, like a pre-production sample back in 2020, and since then this pad has been cloned by a lot of companies, and it's really just a silly feeling mousepad, I feel like is a good way to put it. Like, it's just too fast to use in a game where you're gonna need adequate control, so completely off the table for stuff like TAC FPS, I feel. Maybe tracking heavy games, if you're somebody who wants just no friction whatsoever, it could be a play, but even in something like Fortnite, I feel like I just want something that has more stopping power that doesn't feel like a chore to use. So it is not something that I'm really a fan of. It does have a kind of like floppy, loose, cheap feeling, but when it's actually like on the desk, I don't have any issues. It does just have a standard natural rubber base, and the stitching is slightly raised, but it's not a tough material, so it's not really an issue. The surface does look cool, which is one of the pad's top qualities. You can see it also does look very dirty though. So this is one of those surfaces you're going to constantly need to wipe off with a microfiber cloth, even though this one is remarkably consistent. So I don't know about the long-term durability. I honestly would not recommend picking this up unless you just want to experiment with a cool, unique feeling speed pad. It's just not something that I seriously recommend in game. But yeah, it took Fnatic a while to release this, and it's not really the first time the market has seen a pad like this. Okay, and now last but not least, some could say saving the best for last, we have the updated Lethal Gaming Gear Saturn Pro. This specifically is the XXL soft version, so they actually have made some changes. They do have all the same sizes as before, but now they have a Poron desk mat. Which honestly, I'll get into it, but I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. Like, I have this XL square 500 by 500 lined up with my keyboard, and you are getting about one mouse width more of space. Like, I refuse to believe there's anybody who is playing on a sensitivity where it really makes a difference. But, you know, whatever, if God bless, if you need that desk mat, it is now available. But I would say the big difference is going to be the fact that now they have a soft and an X-soft version. Previously, it was basically one choice, and it was somewhere in between, closer to an X-soft. So if you are looking for a bit more firmness, I will do a lighter test. You can see that there is still going to be plenty of plushiness, but it is just not as soft as an X-soft pad. So yeah, obviously giving people a choice is good. It is what Artisan was onto with their multi-hardness system like 10 years ago. So it's cool to see it offered from Lethal Gaming Gear. In terms of performance, this is the same as the Saturn previously. So if you were a fan of the Surface, which I feel like a lot of people are, I've seen some complaints that it's too smooth, but I don't know. I've basically stopped using mouse pads just to main the Saturn for a while. You can see this pad has been through some shit. It has seen better days, but I've put a lot of time on it. So when I got the new updated version, it was really just an instant transition. Even though there is the slight difference in the base firmness and thickness, it was nothing that I really had to adjust to. This is going to be one of, if not the just most basic, easy to use pads on the market. With the Artisan Zero, it's really a toss-up. I got the orange Artisan Zero X Soft, and I could main both of these pads. There's really not going to be too much of a objective difference when it comes to your performance on different similar cloth pads. But yeah, I would say that the surface feeling and balanced glide on a pad like the Saturn or Zero is more preferable for me than something like the GSRSE or the GSR. But those are all good cloth pads in their own rights. Really, the biggest problem with the Saturn is availability. I feel like it took a long time for the pre-orders to fulfill, and it's just like such a sought-after pad that's hard to actually get your hands on it. But yeah, more or less it is the same as the previous version. Now there is the full desk mat sized option, which is crazy. We've never seen a full-size desk mat with a pour-on base before, and for good reason, because half of it is being wasted. So yeah, that's really all I have to say. The full desk size is $100, I believe. Obviously, the 500 by 500 and 490 by 420 sizes are around half of that. So if you want to check out the Saturn, that is probably my biggest recommendation of the new pads from this video. But also the Gamesense Lidar and the ZOWIE pads were cool as well. I hope you guys found some value in this Mousepad Roundup, because I'm not going to lie, testing mousepads, to be very candid, a lot of the market sucks, or it's just clones. There's not a lot of innovation or like truly great pads. So testing some of these and then being like, hey guys, this is a mediocre pad. I don't know, but it seems like people still want to see it. So let me know what you think of the Mousepad content. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and that's going to be all. I have everything linked below. Peace.